Welcome to the show today. Today we're going to be talking about how to build wealth through contrarian thinking. We have with us Miss Codie Sanchez. She is a reformed journalist turned institutional investor. She is a managing director and partner at Entourage Effect Capital, a private equity firm focused on investing in legalized cannabis industry. We're going to talk to her today about that and much, much more. Miss Codie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brandy. Thrilled to be here.
Thank you for joining us. I'm pretty sure you're very busy, and I'm pretty sure you hit this question all the time. Can I get some money?
Yeah, not in so many words, but yeah, I do.
So I used to be a private equity. I'm a recovering private equity guy. And so I love private equity. I love investment banking. I spent a decade plus in that industry, and I love it very, very much. That's why I was really excited to have you on the show. So, just from a perspective of being a woman in the industry, can you tell other women about the journey that you took to get here?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, well, you're a minority too. It's always weird when you're in an area or a group of people where there's not a ton of people that look like you. I also think there's huge power in it. I remember when I was at Goldman, I think there were kind of two black guys on the desk with me. I think there was two other Latinos and maybe like three girls, three women. Um, and so, but the good part about that is that we got tapped on the shoulder for like every subcommittee on diversity humanly imaginable. We're just like paraded around all of the offices because there weren't too many minorities. And the good part about that is then we got a lot of opportunity to meet people. But I actually started off, I didn't know anything about finance. I come from a family of, my dad didn't get to graduate from college. He's an immigrant. Um, I had no idea about money. I knew nothing about how to invest. And I basically was a journalist first, figured out how to ask a ton of questions, did a lot of it in the US Mexico border about human trafficking and drug smuggling, and then realized that, the only thing that separates me, last name Sanchez, from them, last name Sanchez, was that I had a better socioeconomic upbringing. I was born in the US and my parents were middle class ish. And so that's when I realized that the real thing that separates us, it's not skin color, it's not sex, it's how much grain do we have. And so I wanted to figure out, how do I get more green? Because I think that's the center of power. And if I can get more, green, then lots of other people can come along with me on the ride and we can all get financial freedom together. And so I took my ability to ask a lot of questions and ran with it through Goldman Sachs, Vanguard, State Street, and a bunch of other investment firms before I started my own.
That's awesome. That is awesome. That's awesome. So I had a chance to go on your website and read a lot. I never heard it in this aspect, and I want you to tell our listeners what is a contrarian thinking. What is that exactly for those that are listening and will be listening soon?
Yeah, so Contrarian Thinking is my newsletter. And actually, we just are launching a new website. It's called contrarianthinking.co. So everybody can go check it out. But Contrarian Thinking, it came from the idea of, in private equity, and you probably remember this. I remember one of my first CEOs said, "What we do here is get rich quietly." And I thought that was funny. And then I also thought it was kind of wrong. I'm like, why don't instead we get rich with other people and we bring them along and we tell them how we did it? Because none of this stuff is really rocket science. It's just you have to know the process and the playbook. And so I decided to start Contrarian Thinking because I wanted to get rich together, have lots of people live rich lives, whatever that means for you. We focus a lot on money and critical thinking and getting outside of your mental frameworks. But that's what it is. So each week, we break down specific ways on how to cash flow, specific ways on how to think critically, because I don't think you can have real wealth if you fall prey to doing what everybody else does. You find wealth by doing things that not everybody else does, right? Otherwise, our opportunity would be arbitraged away. So that's contrarian thinking, weekly ideas and a playbook to execute on them.
Oh, that's really good. So you have a playbook, or there's a playbook in place. Can you tell us the necessary skills for this particular thinking?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, your ability to ask questions. That's the one thing that I think is beautiful about the contrarian thinking community, is that I've tried to rile people up and say, like, and it's a joke, but like, this is the opposite of a safe space. This is a space where everybody's going to push on every idea that you have, and you have to learn to love that. You have to learn to defend your ideas. You have to learn to defend against ideas you don't like, because that's what we do in investing, right? People are trying to get what did you say right up front? Everybody's like, can you give me some money? And so that's what we do in investing. Everybody's asking that. And you have to push back and say, no, that's not a good opportunity. Yes, this is. And everything looks shiny when they're asking for money, and you got to dig deeper. So I think the number one thing that people can do is ask more questions, and don't get emotional about questions or people pushing back on your ideas. Instead, revel in that and revel in your ability to better communicate, because that's the key to everything.
Cool. So, with this thinking in mind, what are the advantages that can kind of propel someone to the next level in their career?
Yeah. Well, think about it this way. The difference, there's a large difference in pay between men and women, right? And what's fascinating is we did a study when I was at Goldman Sachs about why women analysts and associates weren't paid as much as men. And one of the biggest contributors to the pay gap was actually negotiations. Men were much better at negotiating. And I can say that quantitatively because they negotiated more frequently. So women on average took the salary offered flat 80% of the time. Men on average took the salary offered flat 20% of the time. So that right there changes your entire wealth creation process. If we start and we're both equally skilled, but you start making more than I do because you were smart and negotiated and I didn't because I thought this was the best package, then you are immediately, it's just like compound interest in investing. You're going to keep compounding those early wins continuously for your entire career. Same thing with investing. If you invest in a deal and you give me terms and I just take your terms flat and say, okay, great, yeah, I'm in, this is great, versus another investor that says, hey, I'll come in, but I want you to decrease the expense ratio. I want you to decrease carry if I bring a larger percentage. I want my cash paid back. We could be in the exact same deal, but this guy's going to do better than I'm going to do better. Why? Because they asked the question. And so I always start with people talking about negotiations and their salary. And then I say, negotiate every client deal you do. And then I say, negotiate every investment deal you do. And as long as you start asking those questions, it becomes second nature, and then you can't help yourself.
That's very interesting. I have a motto. I negotiate through everything, even lunch. I negotiate through everything, not for the fact that I want a discount or because I want or because I want a lower price. It's because I like to just continue to practice the art of negotiation. So I just frequently find myself doing it all the time, even with my friends, and I just find myself doing it. So that when I come into a place when I know I need it, I'm not going to be afraid, because I've already done it so many times. So it's almost like a rehearsal, if you will. It's like I'm just normally doing it like on a regular day. So that's a great way of thinking.
Brilliant. It's so smart. Let me ask you a question. When you do that, are your friends often like, oh, Brandy, come on, what are you doing? Like, is there immediate reaction, something like that?
Some of them, yes, but some of them already know. They were like, okay, he come with this same thing again. But, it's funny because I had a friend that I normally routine did this with, and then they had they was trying to get out a lease, right? This is around like right before COVID. They was trying to get out this lease that they had in the mall, and they literally start negotiating. They start negotiating their way out of the lease, and then they call me and they say, "Hey, Brandon, you know what? This negotiating that you're always doing, like I literally negotiate myself out of this lease." I said, "I told you, it's very effective. It's something you're going to find yourself doing if you're a business person or if you're in a career or just trying to find a new job. It's just really good just to practice. There's nothing wrong with practicing the art that you're going to be effective in the long run."
Well, it's so true. And the point that I think is interesting is when people aren't used to it, that we have been taught somehow, I think it's an American thing, that if you negotiate, it means that you can't pay the price. So it's like, oh, well, you can't afford it, or you're cheap, or these are the narratives we tell ourselves. And what we don't realize is that the wealthiest people that I know negotiate everything. They're ruthless. ruthless. And so, and the only way you can get good at negotiation is exactly that, to practice. So ask for a discount on a cup of coffee, ask for a discount, when you're in a retail, like I love doing that. Every time I go into a boutique or a store, I'm like, what kind of, I like this, I want to buy it. What kind of discounts do you have? What kind of offers? And they're always like, wait, what? I'm like, no, seriously, anything. 50% of the time they give me a discount. Is wild.
So it definitely works. I like to always. I told you I use it all the time, and I know my friends are probably sick of me at this point, but I'm going to continue to do it so I can get better at it. So when it comes to building wealth, and I had a young lady on here like a few weeks ago, and she had made some great points. But for you, what are the tips and the tricks of building wealth using this mindset, this thinking of this contrarian thinking, if you will?
Yeah. Well, first, you know how they say that it's not about what you know, it's about who you know? When it comes to wealth, that's not true. It's about what you know. And the biggest, fastest way to gain wealth is first to understand the game. What is even the game that we're playing? So that's why I think people should always start with reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Wealth Can't Wait. I like people to read Your Money or Your Life, which is about savings. And then I like people to read Thomas Sowell's Economic Facts and Fallacies. That's a big thinker. And then all the way up from little habits accumulated every day. And so start with increasing your knowledge of money. The funny thing about money is it's like a woman. If you don't pay much attention to a woman, if you don't take care of the woman, if you don't learn about the woman, she's probably not going to stick around very much for you. She's not going to show up in your life. She's not going to do a lot for you. Money's the same way. It's a jealous thing, right? Money's very jealous. And so if you're not thinking about her, if you're not learning about her, if you're not spending time on how to grow with her, then she's not going to spend time with you. And so that's the very first thing I tell people. And then I think the second thing that I try to push on people is diversification of revenue streams. With the internet, it used to be like, diversify your revenue. And then people are like, man, I'm not a millionaire. I can't buy a house. I can't like do all these things that we used to have to do to be able to diversify revenue. Today, go make your first dollar on the internet. I can almost guarantee it'll change your life because you'll keep realizing all the different ways that you can make revenue online. And so go start an info product on Gumroad, which is free for like ebooks or whatever. Go start a course on Thinkific. Start earning online and watch the game change.
That's awesome. That's really cool because I was just going to ask you about diversifying when it comes to investing. So, how important is diversifying one's portfolio, even if they're not, I guess, what you consider wealthy or make a lot of money? How do one kind of have the mindset to kind of find themselves kind of diversifying where they get their income from?
Yeah. Well, first, I think so. When I look at my revenue streams, I have about 12 different revenue streams. And those have developed over many years. I mean, you, I'm sure, were similar. When I was in private equity, as an employee, they don't like you having other revenue streams. They want you like this on their revenue stream. And I get that. So it took me a long time. The very first revenue stream that I had outside of my traditional role was renting out a place. My brother and I bought a place together. At the time, I couldn't afford to buy it by myself. Him and I bought a place and we Airbnb'd it. And then we did a long-term rental on that place. And then we added another Airbnb. And we used, the fact that we had pretty good credit to buy a couple of places. Then my brother did house hacking. So he would live in one room of one of the places that we had, pay his rent off with that, and then we'd rent out the other rooms in the place. So I think those are really good places to start. And then, the second thing that I started doing was, and today you can do it in smaller ways. If you want to invest in real estate, you can go to Fundrise. Fundrise is an app where you can invest in real estate with very small dollar amounts. Start with like $100, and you can actually get dividends and cash flow that come to you. So I'd start with something like that. And then I might even do something like invest in, like open a Gemini account in cryptocurrency, invest in a couple of the larger cryptocurrency assets like Ethereum, and you can stake cryptocurrency. So you can actually earn anywhere from 5 to 7% on the crypto assets that you hold by allowing other people to buy them on margin. And so, you don't have to do much for that. Gemini will walk you through exactly how to do it. You can lose principal in the speculation of your assets, but you can get dividend income earned in the meantime. And so those would be two things I would maybe think about.
Those are two great things, to definitely put in one's portfolio. So when it comes to this mindset, when it comes to career, how would one apply that? So they're in a position now that they currently do not like. How do one take this mindset, this way of thinking, to get themselves to the next level in their career?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It is a lot of motivation. So I think you have to start with realizing that a salary is not a way to real generational wealth. You cannot hand down your W 2 to your children. Your W 2 can go away in a minute. And we've seen that happen, obviously, with the pandemic today. If you don't start diversifying now, largely you'll never have real wealth. I went to a Merrill Lynch conference when I was at Goldman a million years ago, and they told me there were 5 ways that generational wealth was created: real estate, inheriting it, marrying into it, being a CEO or a founder of a company, and being a C-suite executive at a Fortune 500 company. Those are really the 5 ways that people do it. And so, what is the one consistent with all 5 of those? Ownership. The only thing that is missing in most people's path to wealth creation is that they're never an owner of anything. They have a salary, they don't own anything. You need stock, you need equity, you need ownership to have real wealth creation. And you can do that today in easier ways than ever before. You can, I mean, at Unconventional Acquisitions, one of our businesses, we teach people how to buy businesses, because it has never been easier and cheaper than to buy a small business and put you in the owner's seat.
Wow, that's awesome. Wow, this is some this is some good tips. I'm going to also take my notes as well. But yeah, that's
Good.
that's really good, because that hits on a good point. And when you talk about acquisitions, now you're talking about something I love, and I start geeking out. So let's not geek out. I'm going to maintain because I love M&A. So when it comes
Me
to that,
too.
I really start getting crazy. So what got you into private equity? You quit the journalism thing and you say, you know what, I'm out. Then you became an institutional investor, and now you into the PE world. How is it going so far?
Good. I mean, we run a $200+ million cannabis private equity fund, which is small in any other asset class, really big in cannabis. We also have about a $10 million small business portfolio for unconventional acquisitions, where we buy and build small companies. And I've been doing that for years. And then before that, I had an alternatives business largely focused on Latin America. So, what I realized, and it's counter to maybe what people are thinking today, is that the stock market's really hard to make money in over the long term. Like, you can have your small allocation that continues to grow every single year in the stock market, and you have some fluctuations. But if you want to create real wealth, it's not built in the stock market. I mean, I know we have like GameStop and all this crazy stuff these days, but for the most part, that speculation, it's such a crowded market with low barriers to entry and information overload widely available, where it's actually very hard to win in the long term. And so I prefer the private markets because there's higher barriers to entry and there's more opportunity in that chaos, because there's more friction. It's harder to buy a private company, it's harder to get intel on a private company. And so that inherently means that there's usually more upside. So I like the private sector much better.
I'm 1,000% with you on that. Definitely love the private side better. It's really
Yeah.
much way more upside. And if the information is not available as a public traded company, it makes it a little bit more easier to negotiate. But that's neither here nor there. Is there a book or something down the road in your future? Because I feel like there should definitely be a book at sometime in the near future. What do you think about
Well,
that?
thanks. I would love to. I started as a journalist. I have this, Brandy, you'll have to hold me accountable if I haven't done it in a year, but I started a book quite some time ago, but it's a fiction book, but with a lot of like the mindset. It's called Subversive. And I've been working on it for, gosh, maybe like 2 years now. So it's one of those things I just need to finish. Um, but I've always sort of felt that we learn the best through parable. It's why the Bible's so prolific. Well, not why, but it is a reason that the Bible's so prolific. And you think of The Alchemist and some of these other ones that stick with us. Humans do well with story. So I am like you. I like tactics. I'm like, oh, you tell me how to make money and it makes sense to me. Like, I'm going to go execute on that right now. But for 90% of the people, they have to first believe that they can. Then they have to believe in the opportunity. Then they have to believe in themselves enough to execute. And then they have to figure out how to not be just so distracted by so many other things and narrow down their focus in order to execute. And only after those steps are the tactics useful for them. But most people need those 4 things first. So that's what I'd like to do in the book. So maybe one day that'll happen.
Well, let me get one of the first copies with a signed signature and deliver it to the house. Because see, I sparked this, so you got to remember, I was the guy that sparked the idea back up, so you can get the book going. So I want you to remember that when it gets going. Codie, I do not want to end this interview. Oh my God, it's been a pleasure talking and speaking with you today.
Right back at you. You got great energy, man.
Well, it's the Starbucks for sure. It's definitely the Starbucks.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate it. This was such a blast. You made it super easy.
All right. Thank you for joining us. Join us on the next IBS.